In a quaint little town there lived a young man named Muntazir. From a young age he was known for his determination and intelligence. He excelled in both academics and sports, earning the admiration of everyone around him. His parents, teachers, and friends were all convinced that Muntazir was destined for great success. However, as he grew older, things began to change. Muntazir became overconfident, believing that his natural talent alone would keep him ahead of others. He started neglecting the small, consistent efforts that had once been the foundation of his achievements. He stopped practicing, delayed his assignments, and spent most of his time watching movies, playing games, and scrolling through social media. His parents often warned him, saying, "Success is not permanent and failure is not final. What truly matters is your effort." But Muntazir paid no heed. He thought, "I've always been good at what I do. Nothing can go wrong." Then, one day, his final exam results were announced. To his utter shock, Muntazir had failed in 2 subjects. It was the first time he had ever failed in his life. His teachers, who once praised him, now shook their heads in disappointment. His friends, who once admired him, began to avoid him. Muntazir's confidence was shattered. He felt embarrassed and lost. His parents were heartbroken but chose not to scold him. Their silence hurt him even more. Muntazir locked himself in his room, consumed by thoughts of what had gone wrong. "Why did I fail?" he wondered. For days he isolated himself, feeling worthless and convinced that his dreams of success had come to an end. One evening his grandfather, a wise and elderly man, came to his room. He sat beside Muntazir and said, "Son, do you know about the phoenix bird?" Still lost in his thoughts, Muntazir shook his head. His grandfather smiled and began, "The phoenix is a magical bird from legends. When it grows old and weak, it burns itself into ashes, but from those ashes it rises again stronger than before. Life works the same way. Sometimes we face failure and feel like we've turned to ashes, but that is the moment to rise again." Muntazir listened carefully but remained unsure. "Grandpa, I've already failed. How can I rise again?" His grandfather placed a gentle hand on his shoulder and said, "Failure is not the end, it is a lesson. Let me tell you a story that will help you understand." He continued, "Many years ago there was a great king named Zafar. He was strong, intelligent, and loved by his people. His army was the strongest and his kingdom flourished. But as time passed, the king became overconfident. He stopped training his soldiers, ignored the needs of his people, and spent his time in luxury, thinking his success would last forever. One day, a neighboring kingdom attacked. Zafar's army was unprepared, and the enemy crushed them. The once great king lost his throne, his wealth, and his power. Humiliated, he fled into the mountains, where he lived alone, feeling broken and defeated. One day, while wandering in the forest, Zafar saw an ant trying to carry a grain of rice up a rock. The ant tried but slipped. It tried again and slipped again. This happened many times, but the ant did not give up. It kept trying until finally, it succeeded in carrying the grain to the top. Watching this, the fallen king had a realization. If a tiny ant does not give up, then why should I? He decided to rebuild his life. Zafar trained harder than before, gathered a new army, and worked with discipline. Years later, he reclaimed his kingdom, but this time, he ruled with wisdom, never taking success for granted. Muntazir sat in silence, absorbing the story. His grandfather looked at him and said, "Son, your failure is just a moment, not your destiny. What matters is what you do next. You can either stay defeated or rise like the phoenix." For the first time in days, Muntazir felt a spark of hope. He wiped his tears and asked, "Grandpa, what should I do now?" His grandfather smiled and said, "Follow 3 golden rules. First, accept your failure. Don't deny it or feel ashamed. Learn from it. Second, take small steps. Create a daily routine, study hard, and remove distractions. Third, never give up. Success does not come overnight. Be consistent, and you will rise again." From that day on, Muntazir changed his approach. He created a strict schedule, reduced his time on social media, and focused on his studies. He worked hard every day, improving step by step. Months later, during the next exam, Muntazir gave his best. When the results were announced, he had not only passed, but secured the top rank in his class. His teachers were amazed at his transformation, and his friends, who once ignored him, now respected him even more. Years later, Muntazir became a successful entrepreneur and a motivational speaker, inspiring others with his story of rising from failure. Life will always have its ups and downs. Success is not guaranteed, but failure is never the end. Like the phoenix, we must rise from our setbacks and become stronger than before.